Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to unpack a story that is honestly absolutely shocking. We're looking at the true story of how the literal father of modern aviation had his entire life's work hijacked by history's most notorious regime. We are talking about a man whose brilliant engineering shapes every single flight you and I take today, and yet his name was totally stolen and repurposed for absolute destruction. It genuinely sounds like the plot of a dystopian thriller, doesn't it? But it's entirely 100% historically accurate. Well before those infamous Stuka bombers were terrorizing Europe under his stolen name, Hugo Junkers was actually a staunch pacifist. He completely revolutionized flight, only to be utterly erased from the history books by the very totalitarian regime that exploited his genius. The people who took his legacy did literally everything they could to make sure the world forgot who he really was. Section 1. The Wood and Canvas Era. The deadly status quo of early flight. Okay, so to truly appreciate what Junkers achieved, we kind of have to put ourselves in the terrifying reality of 1915 aviation. Back then, pilots were essentially trusting their lives to giant flying kites. I mean, they were just stretched fabric and wood, barely held together by hand-tensioned steel cables. And as you can imagine, wood and canvas warped in the rain, they rotted in storage, splintered in storms, and worst of all, easily caught fire on impact. But Junkers, he envisioned a completely different reality. He looked at corrugated iron and steel, materials that actually defy the elements, survived hard impacts, and were structurally sound. It was a basic truth of physics, really, but the entire aviation establishment completely ignored it because they were just stuck in their old habits. Section 2. The sheet metal donkey, a thermodynamics professor, changes the world. Now, here's a crazy fact. The guy who realized metal was the future wasn't even an aviation insider. He was this incredibly wealthy industrialist who actually made his fortune inventing things like a revolutionary calorimeter and, of all things, the tankless gas water heater. His name was synonymous with reliable home heating way before it ever took to the skies. But what's absolutely staggering is that this wealthy industrialist was exactly 56 years old before he ever built his first airplane. I mean, in an industry packed with young, 20-something daredevils, he proved he was the ultimate late bloomer. He just looked at a deeply flawed industry and decided to use his vast engineering background to fix it. And to fix it, he had to completely rethink how a plane was even held together. So he threw out that chaotic mess of external wires and struts that literally every other designer on Earth was using, and in 1910, he patented a radical cantilever wing. By utilizing the wing's own internal structure to carry the load, he established the exact same structural philosophy that every single commercial aircraft still uses today. It was a total game changer. This breakthrough led directly to his first major aviation milestone. In December 1915, his incredibly heavy all-metal monoplane successfully took flight. Now, the test pilots jokingly called it the sheet metal donkey because, let's be real, it was much heavier and slower than the wooden biplanes of the day. But it proved a vital point to a highly skeptical military establishment. The future of aviation was metal. When this thing landed hard, it didn't splinter into a million pieces. When it sat out in the pouring rain, it didn't warp. Section 3. Birth of commercial aviation. Connecting the world. So after World War I ends, the Treaty of Versailles brutally restricts German military aviation. But Junkers, who was a man with socialist sympathies and a very strict pacifist, didn't see this as a defeat at all. For him, it was total liberation. He never wanted to build weapons in the first place. The treaty finally freed him up to build what he genuinely cared about: peaceful civilian aircraft designed to safely carry passengers. He genuinely believed, and this is so beautifully optimistic, that if you built a global network of air routes, bringing people together safely, it would eventually make war economically irrational. His rapid, explosive innovation reshaped the entire industry in the blink of an eye. He went from that heavy J-1 proof of concept in 1915 straight into the F-13 in 1919, and then hit the mass-produced Ju-52 by 1930. Just think about that. In a mere 15 years, he created the literal backbone of modern passenger travel. That middle milestone, the F-13, was an absolute paradigm shift. Before this plane, passengers were literally riding in converted military biplanes, sitting in freezing open cockpits with scarves and goggles, just praying the fabric wings wouldn't tear right off. Junkers built the F-13 entirely from corrugated duralumin. He put paying customers inside a sealed, heated cabin behind large windows. By finally treating them like civilized travelers rather than daredevils, he single-handedly transformed aviation into a viable, profitable civilian industry.
And his empire expanded way, way beyond just the factory floor. He was a visionary who saw absolutely no boundary between pioneering engineering and shaping human culture itself. He actually founded the airline that eventually merged to become Lufthansa, and he even facilitated the relocation of the avant-garde Bauhaus design school to Dessau, heavily funding them out of his own pocket. The guy was reinventing the built world from all possible angles.
Section 4. The Nazi hostile takeover. The regime versus the pacifist. But sadly, everything came to a devastating halt in 1933 when Adolf Hitler became chancellor. The new aviation commissioner, Hermann Goering, demanded that Junkers retool his civilian passenger plane factories for secret military rearmament. And the 73-year-old pacifist did the unthinkable. He looked right at the most terrifying totalitarian state on Earth, a regime demanding his life's work for their war machine, and he told them no. Just incredible defiance. Well, the state responded with absolute ruthlessness. They systematically stripped him of his life's work, step by step. First, they demanded his patents. When he delayed, they escalated, threatening him with high treason, which, of course, carried a death sentence. Under this immense, crushing pressure, they forced the surrender of his majority stake in his own company. And finally, they legally banished him from Dessau, the city where he had built his empire for 46 years, and placed him under house arrest. The walls just completely closed in around him. Separated from his work, his factories, and his home city, his health failed rapidly. He died in exile on his 76th birthday, in a town that meant absolutely nothing to him. And shortly after, the regime forced his grieving wife to sell their remaining shares for literal pennies on the dollar, completing the hostile takeover. Section 5. The Stolen Legacy, Appropriation by the Third Reich. What happens next is honestly a masterclass in tragic irony and state propaganda. The very people who destroyed this brilliant pacifist immediately moved to steal his identity for their own gain. The Nazi regime actually threw a lavish state funeral for him. You had Hermann Goering and senior officials standing there, mourning before the coffin of a man they had relentlessly persecuted to death. And it wasn't out of respect, no way. It was a purely calculated move because they desperately needed his globally respected brand name to legitimize their brand new Air Force. The contrast here is just heartbreaking. On one hand, you have the creator's vision, safe travel, connecting cultures, making borders irrelevant. And on the other, you have the regime's application. They slapped his globally trusted name onto the terrifying Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber. They even attached wailing sirens to the landing gear of these planes purely to terrorize people on the ground. They forever associated his peaceful genius with blitzkrieg destruction. Even his absolute favorite commercial airliner, the Ju-52, which people affectionately called Aunt Ju, was completely warped by the regime. The plane he built to connect the world was conscripted into a military transport. It was used to deliver thousands and thousands of soldiers to their deaths in bloody battles in places like Crete and Stalingrad. After the war, his factories in Dessau were stripped down to the bare concrete and completely dismantled by the Soviets as war reparations. But here is the silver lining. His actual engineering legacy survived. It became the global standard. Metal frames instead of wood, cantilever wings instead of braced wires, enclosed, heated cabins instead of open cockpits. His innovations became the literal blueprint for every single commercial aircraft that crosses our skies today. Which leaves us with a final, really vital question to think about. Who really owns the future? The name Junkers may have been temporarily hijacked by history's greatest villains, and yes, his life was tragically cut short by them. But his ideas, they could not be destroyed. Every single time you step safely onto a metal passenger plane, you are experiencing the triumphant, enduring legacy of Hugo Junkers. The regime stole his name, for sure, but they couldn't steal the future he built for us all.